Hey guys, it's Holly here, and before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to personally invite you to our Executive Pastor Coaching Network this fall. If you're enjoying what you're learning on the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast, then join us here in our Houston offices to receive in-person coaching from William Vanderbloemen, Tim Stevens, and Tony Morgan. You won't want to miss it. So to learn more, go to our website, vanderbloemen.com, and click on coaching.
Church leaders need intentional development to help them discover their capacity.
When studying leadership, it can be easy to stereotype people with large numbers. The truth is, some people have an innate ability to think and inspire. If a position is worth the money that you're paying for that role, it will pay for itself and some within the first 2 years of that hire.
Hello and welcome to the Vanderbloemen Leadership Podcast, where we talk about how to build, run, and keep great teams. I'm your host, Holly Tate, and on today's episode, I get to talk with my friend and colleague, Ben Homesley. Ben is our COO here at Vanderbloemen Search Group, and he leads our team that conducts our compensation consultations. So in today's episode, Ben and I talk about the challenges that every pastor and church leader is facing regarding compensation. What in the world should you pay your pastor? What benefits should we include in a benefits package? And what are the biggest mistakes that churches and pastors are making? We'll talk about all of that and more in today's episode. Tweet your takeaways to today's episode using the hashtag Vandercast. That's hashtag Vandercast. Now let's jump in and learn all that Ben has to say about compensation. All right, Ben, our expert here at Vanderbloemen Search Group on compensation analysis and benefits packages for church leaders. Why in the world should church leaders even care about salary, compensation, and benefits?
Yeah, that's a great question and great thing to start off with today. Really, at the end of the day, we're all called to serve the Lord with our various tasks or tools or gifts, and one of the tools that's necessary to sustain life in this world is compensation. And just even from a stewardship standpoint of pastors and their responsibilities to be good stewards of what they've been blessed with as funds to churches, they need to take care of those people that are doing ministry with them. And it's so often that we run into situations where that's not the case. So we try to do whatever we can to encourage that, to see that there is good stewardship across the board, not only people giving to churches, but also churches taking care of the people that are giving back and serving the ministries.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's such a needed topic for church leaders to hear about, because that leads to my next question that I have for you. We have so many committee members out there that are, lay leaders at a church. They're not on staff, but because they're on a board, their responsibility is to help make sure that the staff is properly paid. And we get phone calls where they have no idea where to start because they're in the for-profit world. So, what are the key differences between the nonprofit, especially church world, and the for-profit world that committee members and lay leaders out there should be thinking about when putting together a salary package for a pastor?
Yeah, I think, and that's another great question. I think it's funny to hear people's kind of perspectives on what pastors should be paid that really have no idea or have never worked in those worlds before. All the time when I tell friends of mine that maybe haven't come from a church background or definitely grow up in church, we do compensation studies for pastors. Like, what? Pastors get paid? I thought that's just what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to serve, and maybe they live at the church or something in a house. But that's just not reality, especially as the environment and church culture is changing. And so in the for-profit world, obviously there is not the level of transparency that you'd find in the non-church, non-profit world, with things like 990 filings with the IRS having to be public domain and something that is accessible by all entities. So,
for people who don't know what that is, what is a 990?
Yeah, it's part of the tax filing process that all nonprofits except for churches are required to file with the IRS, and it is something that's accessible to the public through the IRS database. And so there's a level of transparency built in the nonprofit world of what executives benefits and compensation, and even to the ones that qualify, housing allowance all look like. The church world obviously is not held by those same standards because of just the way that the church's rights and freedom of religion laws are held up. They're not required to file those filings. So it makes kind of that level of transparency, or that level of just information that's out there, is nowhere near like it would be in the nonprofit or in some cases with publicly traded companies in the for-profit world. So there's this vacancy, there's this great void of data on, what is the appropriate range of compensation for pastors. So it depends on a number of variables, but really I think the biggest difference from the for-profit and the nonprofit world is just the lack of available data for churches and other growing Christian ministries and organizations that's out there.
Yeah. What do you think are the key components that should go into making up a pastor's salary specifically?
Yeah, well, a number of important factors to look at. I mean, you've obviously got to look at the most important is what the role is. You've got a different level of pay for different people on staff depending on what the level of leadership and where they sit on the org chart. But beyond that, with any role, there would be, what we like to call a reasonable level of compensation for that particular role. And that changes as you scale up in size and organization, also from an attendance standpoint. So you need to look at location, you need to look at size, you need to look at budget factors, you need to look at the job description as well. These are all things that kind of help determine that range of what's reasonable. And then trying to figure out where someone falls on that reasonable range, you look at things like job performance, you look at things like tenure, you look at organizational loss and replacement cost if that person were to just up and leave, or God forbid something negative happen, and they have to be removed from their post for unforeseen reasons that happen to come up. And these are things that happen all the time. Week after week, we're hearing these stories, we're getting these phone calls of churches that are in these situations, like, what do we do? Yeah. So they're very real. They're things that they need to consider, and also, churches need to plan for these things. In the instance of emergent situations where the unexpected do happen, and they have to go outside and recruit somebody at a reasonable wage that helps continue to move the vision and the values and the system of the church forward.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that William talks about in the book Next, Pastoral Succession That Works, is so many churches don't even have money put away for an emergency succession plan. We've had clients that, I remember one of them, the pastor literally had a heart attack on Christmas Eve, So things like that you have to think about when you're thinking about their pay structure, that what is the cost to replace this person? Absolutely. Because of the significance that they bring to not only, of course, their role, but the church and the community at large. Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of those, especially those quick transitional situations where you have someone that is unexpectedly leaving. They may have been underpaid for a long season of time. So now you're faced as a church, as an environment with, we've got to attract somebody else from the outside to our situation. We've been underpaying. So what a quote unquote the market looks like for this position is much, much more than what we're comfortable giving as from a budgetary standpoint. Yeah. So it can be a tough conversation for churches that are not making those plans, aren't in a regular cycle to review their compensation structures. And something that's, honestly, you can't do it overnight. You can't right-size things overnight. You've got to make incremental changes from year to year to year to get yourself in more of a competitive situation. And I always kind of caution from talking about these things with the church world because there's such a spiritual element. Absolutely. But at the same time, you've got to staff accordingly. You've got to pay accordingly because your business is Christ's business to move the kingdom forward. So, I always like to put a little bit of caution around these terms that, we are talking and using these terms for business reasons, not, to unspiritualize things.
Absolutely. But talk to me about, because I know I've seen this a lot, with pastors who are facing retirement and they don't even have a retirement, So I think that's one of the things that we encourage churches, and I'd love to hear your insight since you're the leader of that on our staff, helping churches think about compensation. When they're thinking about a senior pastor's retirement, how can they even go about thinking about that? I know there's specific laws and savings things that pastors can have that other non-pastors can't have, but how should churches think about retirement for pastors?
Yeah, pastors are notoriously terrible at saving long-term for themselves. I mean, they're giving back to the church. They don't make a ton to begin with. And what they do have excess in, they typically are giving away or, supporting other missions, putting their kids through college. Some of the benefits that are nice with the pastors and kind of compensation structure is they do obviously qualify for housing allowance in certain instances. But, retirement is something that hasn't always been something that's been at the forefront of churches. And we see so many churches that these guys are faced with, retirement age. It's just right from a number of markers from a timing perspective for them to need to move on. They haven't done a terrible job, but it's time to pass that torch, but they can't, and they hang on too long, and because they financially can't afford to have that lack of income, or they step down and they're selling insurance or doing something else just to make ends meet and into the sunset years. So churches that are thinking ahead for that, protecting their pastor against those situations are some of the smartest churches we see. We do benefits analysis when we look at different things that our churches are providing from an overall compensation package, and that includes the benefits, 401k, rabbi trust funds or another vehicle that a lot of churches are looking at, and will just help them prepare for those golden years. They're giving some of their best years to the church, and they're not always thinking about those churches, the times when it's just going to be them, the grandkids, and their spouse after retirement. So it's a big struggle that we are trying to bring to the front at every one of these consultations that we do with churches. Yeah.
What are other key mistakes that you see churches make? I mean, you're helping so many churches think through compensation, trends for their own church and setting up their staff for success. What are some of the key mistakes that you see churches make?
Hiring too many people at lower levels of pay rather than really high qualified people at a higher level.
Oh yeah. Talk more about that. What do you mean?
I think there's something to be said for someone that has a leadership capacity and an ability to replicate themselves, to recruit and build others. And I think there's a tendency in churches, especially larger churches, that as they grow, as they continue to evolve as this body of Christ, this growing organism, that there's a level to hire or a tendency to hire a lot of mid-level management type roles where, churches will be able to see a much higher performance if they hire a high capacity leader that can bring people in, recruit and train, build and equip and push out high level volunteers. They can pay that one person more. They only are charging one person on staff with having to buy in and be a part of this vision, but they're highly compensated, and they're owning it and they're living this. Now, you need to keep those people, because when you lose somebody like that, it's a much bigger hole than losing one mid-level person. Mm-hmm. So that's why obviously healthy culture and vision buy-in, all those things are important as well. But I think the biggest thing we're seeing is people moving more to these low-level ministerial manager roles rather than these high-level leaders.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of churches don't think about when they're doing that is all of the, quote-unquote, non-monetary costs.
Absolutely.
So talk about what are those
payroll. I mean, there's a lot of churches will do different tax offsets, and depending on how they're hired on, if they're independent contractors as ministers, there can be some different supplemental tax relief that they also have as a burden. You've got the cost of benefits, you've got any kind of other allowances or hiring expenses, moving allowances, things like that are all non-monetary type of benefits, but overall are driving down that net profit at the end of the year on your income statement. So
even providing a computer or
absolutely.
Overhead for their
office
desk.
space,
all of
office
that
space utilities. I mean, it all starts to add up, and when you look at the cost savings to the church overall, when you focus on a few high capacity people that can replicate themselves rather than these mid-level managers, I think the church will see a much larger return on their investment.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've talked a little bit about benefits, and this is something that we're asked a lot because I just feel like there aren't a ton of great resources out there about how churches should even begin to think about benefits. How do they even start thinking about it?
And you're looking at what's going on nationwide, and even some of the requirements in healthcare and how everything's shifting on a weekly basis, there's not a great resource for that. We are ourselves, we interact with a lot of different churches, so we get to see what a lot of different churches are doing. but there's not kind of one industry standard. So whenever we do our assessments of compensation, staff salaries, and just overall packages, we take the benefits off the table. We look at apples and apples comparison, and what that looks like is a salary and a housing portion that we consider cash compensation to do all our benchmarking. The other stuff, yes, is expensive. It adds to the overall cost of that individual as a hire, but from a recruiting, from a transitional standpoint, those aren't the key decisions that are happening, or at least in a candidate's head, as they're looking at a new calling. Mm-hmm. They're important, but they're definitely not as much of a driver as a salary portion. So we take that stuff out, but we do analyze it when we look at overall health of an organization and what they're providing. Most churches are providing some level of healthcare, mm-hmm. Stipend or supplement for their pastors, mm-hmm. and I think that's a great thing as pastors, and we're called to take care of people. I think not having to worry about your family's physical health is obviously a huge burden off their hands. So most churches, and all really healthy, thriving churches that we work with, are doing some level of that. Now, in the past, it's been a lot of full family insurance. We're seeing that kind of wane down as the financial healthcare burdens are increasing nationwide. So that's yet to be determined. There's still an evolution, and depending on what happens next year with the election, it can swing in a very different direction. So who knows? But yeah, there is really no standard across the board, and that's why it takes looking at an overall health of the package. Is this a competitive versus what else is there on the market? We did a great study partnering with Leadership Network that kind of looks at a lot of these just overall overarching trends with churches, what they provide, and it gives some percentages and data points. It's something that people should check out for sure, because it is a helpful tool at least to start a conversation in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. You can Google 2014 Leadership Network Salary Report, and it'll pop up. It's pretty simple. It's called the Large Church Salary Report of 2014.
Incredibly creative title. No, it is. It's intentional for that, for SEO purposes. Search optimization.
And they do it every couple years, and it's not granular because, like you've said, every church is unique, and so a compensation package has to be tailored to mm-hmm. geographic setting, job description, how large they are. But the report does a really good job of providing overarching trends that I know thousands of church leaders out there have read it and found it really helpful. So what about this question that it's kind of controversial? What do you think about pastors having some sort of bonus structure?
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing that? Is that common? What are the pros and cons?
Yeah. So I really like it personally. I probably have the personality though that reacts more to incentives.
Yeah.
Than someone that's just a super self-motivator.
Yeah, you're not competitive at all.
No, I'm kidding, but I really do like the compensation, at least the bonus compensation structure. It we always put it this way: if a position is worth the money that you're paying for that role, it will pay for itself and some within the first 2 years of that hire. It should, or else you need to revisit that.
And what do you mean by a church member paying for themselves? What does that look like in the church?
Not so much a church member, but the staff role.
That's what I meant. The staff member.
Role, take, for instance, children's ministry. Yep. I think, and we say this all the time whenever we're talking about children's pastor searches, the church has done just globally a very I don't want to say poor because I'm going to offend people, but I said it, but a poor job of training lifelong children's pastors. Yeah. Every growing church needs one and wants one because they've identified that as a revenue source of the church that's mm-hmm. driving it, that's allowing them to free up funding for community outreach events because they've got a thriving children's ministry and do other kind of service and ministry focused initiatives. Because if kids love the church, they're going to bring their parents, they're going to bring their friends, they're going to bring these equal dollars and cents down to churches and organizations. So churches are figuring that out, but we just have been terrible at training leaders that see children's ministry at that level of importance and as a lifelong ministry and not a stepping stone or a transitional ministry. that being said, if you've got a successful one, they're going to come in there, they're going to blow it up. You're going to have more people coming. You're going to have, just great, real spiritual change happening. You're going to have just some awesome momentum that's driving more people to your church, which equal more dollars. And there you have it. I mean, you're paying for itself within the first couple of years. So when you wrap around a compensation structure based off of a lot of those incentives and metrics, there needs to be spiritual elements, obviously, included in those, and like real life change, not just numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But you start to incentivize your staff to buy into that vision, to push the whole kingdom forward and the whole system forward.
Yeah.
But then also they're pushing back and driving for the bottom line that's obviously paying for itself. So we love those type of structures. We actually operate our business in a way here at Vanderbloemen where we all have skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
We're all pushing this thing forward and all trying to help each other out, knocking down silos and all collaborating, because we all, at the end of the day, want to see this company excel.
Yep.
The church should be no different. We're an organization. We're not a church. We work with a lot of churches, and we operate in a lot of way from just a spiritual standpoint that way. However, our people are bought in. We're all pushing this thing forward, and I think it goes back to a basic compensation structure that puts everybody on one path towards the same goals.
Yeah, and I think there's I think oftentimes people correlate bonus structure to commission, and they are different.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's one of the key differences is, this is not you get a commission on how many people got baptized this week, but it's a bonus that's set up to, are you living out the values, mission, and vision of the church? Is your ministry growing? Not because we care about numbers, but we care about life change and people coming to Christ,
Absolutely.
And I don't know how other people would feel about this, but personally, I think it can also help avoid burnout, because the people are seeing directly how their role and their hard work is impacting the kingdom in their church.
Absolutely. I mean, these people are doing what they do because they love it, because they feel called to it. And to see the level of importance being brought to their roles in their ministry, that's gonna build ownership. That's gonna build buy-in, and having a structure that, again, like Holly said, is not a commission based, but is a motivator. Sets everybody up for success.
Yeah.
It really does. And you obviously don't want to do it in a salesy way.
So what do you think, when churches are thinking about compensation analyses, what should a proper or most helpful analysis look like? Do you only do one member on your staff? Should you do everybody at once? How do you recommend churches think about that if they've never done it before?
Yeah, I think you need to start with the top. It all, just like vision, just like leadership, it all starts at the top and trickles down. That's got to be right from the get-go. Now, obviously, they're like every organization, churches are no different. There's a difference in what the number one gets paid versus everybody else on staff, and we fully agree that it should be that way. However, there are healthy levels of ratios and compensation structures in the way that trickles down towards other members on staff. And again, there are very wide range for each role and what it would be quote unquote appropriate for the level of attendance and budgetary constraints that you guys have on staff. So it starts at the top. Definitely the people that sit around the leadership conversations and the kind of the head level of whether executive team or director levels, whatever that top tier is, we recommend having those people analyzed on an annual, maybe not annual, but every 3 to 5 year basis. Changes happen every year with cost of living and inflation and just demographic switches, even down to zip codes. And it's helpful to keep that all in relation when your staff is coming up for annual review. So we encourage churches to do that every couple of years. You don't need to do everybody on staff. I think you can take a lot of healthy percentages and multiply them out just based off of some kind of good rules of thumb once you get down past the higher levels of leadership. But definitely those people that sit around that table making those key decisions on vision casting and where the church is headed should be reviewed every few years.
Yeah, that's great. And then I think one of the things that I love about our team here at Vanderbloemen that you lead, that does our compensation analyses, is that two things. One, you guys get it down to the zip code, which is huge. I mean, I think there are some free stuff online where you can type some stuff in.
There's a lot of great, you're moving from this city to this city, cheesy, with all kinds of advertisements and stuff all over them. But yeah, no, we do break it down to literally the latest quarter-specific release data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we do that using some in-house tools that we subscribe to and have been trained in and by compensation specialists. And, you cannot get more accurate data than this. It literally doesn't exist, or not that the government legally releases. So it's not more specific, at least in terms of up-to-the-minute relevance than the tools that we have.
Especially because, talk a little bit about the survey. So the report of Leadership Network that came out in 2014, that report came from Warren Bird and his team at Leadership Network. Super hard work analyzing all those trends. And then we partner with them. We are the only ones because we have a confidential, partnership with them where that data we use. So it's the largest sample size.
So that's the largest sample size of one of the private studies, which we help them solicit to different churches all over the country. On an annual basis. We also subscribe to a couple other tools that are used. I'm not going to go into the details of them, because they're kind of boring. But but then also we look at different 990 filings as well, and look at those in ways that are applicable to church situations, depending on the specific role that we're looking at and analyzing. With the senior pastor, executive pastor, that translates to other roles within the corporate world that have similar types of job duties. Especially when you look at Christian ministries and things like those industries that have to file the 990 filing. So that data is available. We look at those in conjunction with the leadership data, with conjunction of a couple other private studies that are done by other church organizations, and benchmark the salaries off of all of those sources independently and then together.
So that much work. That's amazing.
We're splicing the data up in a bunch of different ways to give you kind of, equal sources, weighted sources, and then one final kind of overall compensation. Like, this is where you fall, and this is where you should fall. Kind of deal.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. Well, we always like to end our podcast with a few fire questions. So just going to ask you, what first comes to your head. So the first one is, are you reading any books lately?
Let's see. Between the hours of 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. up at the regular times, we've got 3 kids, 3 and under. So we don't
no time for books.
Yeah. So I am leading my team right now through our annual reading of Good to Great, Jim Collins. It's a classic. I read it once a year. Just good reminder there. I just picked up Multipliers, the Liz Wiseman group.
I haven't read that one yet.
And excited to start that one. I'm reading a lot of church pamphlets and bylaws. We do that pretty regularly with
employee handbooks that you're reading.
All that really fun page burner stuff. But yeah, those are a couple of the ones that I'm thumbing through right now.
And what's a favorite app that you've used lately?
Oh, besides Uber, when my truck doesn't start and I have to pull into the office. Let's see.
Your 1965, is that right?
66, yeah.
66 Chevy.
Pickup that I like working on. What are some of the apps? I just got my Up band, so I've been using the Up app a lot. Man, I've been sucked into this stupid game called Agario. You're this little ball that goes around and eat up other balls, and it's the most pedestrian, dumb thing ever, but I'm hooked. I'm up, when I should be reading these books in the middle of the night. Rocking kids back to sleep playing this game. So that, we use a lot of tools. Awesome. Evernote's really awesome. I use that a lot. And Wonderlist is one of my favorites. I love Wonderlist.
Yeah, I like that one too. Okay, you are going to lunch at Torchy's Taco across the street, how many times a week do you think you do that?
At least once a week. There was 1 week when I ate there every day.
Oh my goodness.
That's been a while.
Well, are you going to get the salmon taco or are you going to get the trailer park trashy style?
Am I stuck on those two? Can I get off that option?
Oh, you're the first one that's asked that. Why not? Go for it.
I'm going with the Matador, which is on the secret menu.
Oh, yeah. If you didn't know.
It's like a taco within a taco.
Torchy's has a secret menu.
And there's some bacon on it and barbacoa and sour cream, and it's the worst thing for you, but it's incredible.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can only eat one. They're so big. But, yeah.
And who do you look to for leadership advice? Who's kind of the most influential leader in your life that you look to?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have such a great team around us with a lot of just incredible leadership. William's been an awesome leader, role model, mentor to me as we've kind of built this company out over the last 5 years. I'm a big Seth Godin fan. I'm a big Jim Collins fan. I'm a big Tim Stevens fan. If you guys don't know him, he's really cool. Honored to have him with us as well.
That's great.
Guys like that.
Yeah. Okay, there's 30 seconds left on the clock, and the game's about to end. Are you going to punt or pass?
Why would you pass? It's rush. I'm going to rush. Absolutely.
So
I don't
great.
know why you would pass.
I love hearing people's answers to that. Okay, but why are you going to rush?
Leading rusher in the NFL, why would you pass the ball? Like MVP, I'm still blown away by that call.
That's
still blown
awesome.
away.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Ben. This has been super helpful. I think a lot of church leaders are going to find this inspiring and really practical examples of places they can start when they're thinking about compensation. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can connect with us on Twitter at Vanderbloemen SG and hashtag your key takeaways with hashtag Vandercast. You can also receive more information about what we do here at Vanderbloemen Search Group and notes from today's podcast at vanderbloemen.com/podcast. See you next time.